My name is Peter Bazaka, and I'm kind of wearing three hats today, as it turns out. One is I'm your presenter today, and I am the owner of Washington BBI, which is a business consulting and brokering firm located right across the street at the River Street offices, so local office. Secondly, I want to welcome you on behalf of the Consultants Coffee Clatches. This is a group of professional service providers who are the people that we draw from to provide the expertise for these lunch and learn sessions, which are hosted by the third hat. I'm a member of the Snoqualmie Valley Chamber of Commerce, a group that I'm just in awe of. They do so much for our communities and for our business community in particular. So I also happen to be on the board of directors there. So I guess that's why they asked me to come and talk with you today, is because of all these different hats. They didn't want them stacking up on their cabinets, I think. So what is KPI, Key Performance Indicator? Well, I went out to the internet and looked for definitions of this, and of course Google came back with more definitions than there are stars in the sky. But the one that I like the best is this one here. The key performance indicators are quantifiable measures of goal achievement. Quantifiable measures of goal achievement. That's important, and we'll talk more about that as we go through today's presentations. So KPIs, or key performance indicators, are usually, but not always, ratios, comparing one factor to another factor. Could be a standard financial ratio, and we'll talk more about financial ratios in a little bit. It could be some customized ratio, specific to your business or your industry. It could be a calculation measuring something specific, like customer retention, for example. It could be a predictor of future performance, right? If this is particularly true, and my background is in sales and marketing. It's the other S&M, and so for sales, if we take a look at funnel management and how many new prospects we're putting into the funnel, that's a key indicator for us. Because if we know if we're looking at 5,000 new prospects, and our close rate is 10%, and our average sale is 100,000, we're going to have a pretty good week. Sometimes the KPI that people use are just utter nonsense. And I've got a story about one of those. This is a real incident. A CPA called me up and said, "Pete, I really need you to talk to this guy. He wants to sell his business, but I'm not sure that's the right thing to do right now." I said, "Well, okay, I'll go." So I took him out to lunch at that, it's a place in Renton with, exotic cuisine, Yankee Grill. And we're in the middle of Yankee Grill, and he's telling me about wanting to sell his business, that he's had the thing, he's worked there for 30 years, he's owned it for 20 years, and he's just run the thing into the ground. Well, okay, so how do you know you've run it into the ground? What do you think? Why do you think that? Well, I look at this one, factor, and it's just such a horrible situation. He says, and I borrowed money from my son, and now I can't pay my son back. And before I know it, he's pushed his plate forward to the middle of the table, and he's literally got his forehead on the edge of the table, and he is sobbing his brains out and talking about a .45 caliber solution to his problems. Wow. So what do, right? So we talked. I talked with him, found out that he's open to having my company take a look at his company and analyze the financials, kind of analyze the kind of more qualitative aspects of his business. And it turns out there were two things that was going on. One was he was looking at a KPI that was utterly meaningless. It was some ratio of the amount of debt he was using compared to the amount of credit line he had available. Really? You're running your business on that? And he had just gotten rid of a credit line because in the last 20 years or something, I guess it was 15 years, he'd never used it. So he'd forgotten that he'd gotten rid of it. So all of a sudden, that number jumped up to be really high, in terms of the amount of debt that he was using compared to, well, he had almost no debt, but the ratio was just glaring. And he had another little problem. He was a skier, and he had run into a tree, a moving object and an immobile object. Anyways, severe concussion. The ski patrol dragged him down off the mountain, and like 2 weeks later, he's in his kitchen and he's walking through his kitchen. His feet go right out from underneath him. He falls back and conks his head against the counter. Another serious concussion. So one in the front, one in the back. So yeah, no wonder this guy was a little emotional and maybe not thinking quite so rationally. So what did we do? Well, first thing is I called the CPA and had said, you get the guns, you call his family, you get those guns out of his house, period, right now. Get those things out. Secondly is call the board of directors, and you don't let this guy sell the business. You don't let him make any major changes or choices, at least for the time being. And third thing is you have the family drag his butt down to a doctor because he needs some help. In the meantime, we did the business health assessment. Now fast forward about 45 days, and the business health assessment did uncover some things. It turns out he had, about 1.2 in inventory, and about 750,000 of it was obsolete inventory that he'd been carrying for 20 years or something since he bought the business. I mean, it was obsolete when he bought it. And so we had him fire sale, we had him write it off, we had him fire sale the goods, use that free cash to pay off what little debt he had. And, in a month, the numbers for his business just looked fantastic. And he got the medical help that he needed, and he got to, and 30 days later, 45 days later, he could not wait to get into the office in the morning because he had 30 things on his to-do list that he couldn't wait to get started on. So the difference was night and day. But the change, we got him refocused on using key performance indicators that were meaningful to what his goals were and his strategies were for his business in the short term and in the little bit longer term. Looking at the wrong thing can really throw you off. So, every once in a while you do run into those clients that are looking at factors that are just utter nonsense. So what about for you in your business or your organization? What are the right KPIs for you? Sorry, there are no magic answers to that. So later on, we're going to do about half me yakking at you, and about half of the session will be me passing out some pamphlets and you looking at some information about your businesses. So for anyone who signed up, who registered for this workshop prior to yesterday at about noon or so, I got your names, I know your companies, and I looked up the information. I looked up what the Department of Revenue of the state thinks you do for a living. And I printed out information with the KPIs for your industry and what my best guess is for your revenue, relative revenue size. So we'll pass those out. I also printed out all of them and put them in all of the packets. So you can not only look at your information, you can see how that's different for other kinds of businesses. So there is no magic, this is the KPI, or these are the couple of KPIs you should be looking at in your business. There's some that are, generally ones that you want to look at, but there's no one specific one or group of them. It really depends on what it is that what kind of a business you have, what level you are in your business. I'm pretty sure that the head of General Motors looks at different KPIs than I do. If you have a small company versus a large company, if you're at lower end of the management scale, middle, upper end, or if you're senior management, you're going to look at different indicators that are relevant to your role, your point of view within the company. Are you in sales? Are you in accounting? Are you in this? Are you in that? So those things are all relevant to the KPIs you choose for you to look at for your business and where you are in that business. Now, I'm going to caution you, about the nail and hammer syndrome. To a hammer, everything looks like a nail. My background's sales and strategic marketing. To me, everything looks like a sales issue. And so when I am consulting with people, I need to be really careful of that because I'm keenly aware of the sales issues. right? But when I look at marketing, it's entirely different than when Scott Michelson looks at marketing issues. He's looking for different things. Or when somebody's looking at the IT and business process issues like Daryl does, or any of the other things that we do for a living, right? So whether you're looking at company focused or client focused, whether you're looking at customer retention or customer acquisition, there's different KPIs for just about anything you want to accomplish. It really depends on what are your goals, what is your strategies. And there's sort of a pecking order to things. There's the vision of your company. If you are a CEO of your company, then your biggest role, the most important responsibility that you need to own is vision. You don't have to have or create the vision, but you do need to own that vision. And to communicate that vision of where you want the company to go, you need to communicate that throughout the ranks of the organization so that everyone buys in and so that everybody understands how valuable their contribution is toward achieving and attaining that vision. So vision is broken down into goals, and then you break the goals down into what strategies can you execute in order to achieve your goals, in order to attain your vision. Does this make sense? Okay, kind of a hierarchical thing there. KPIs can sometimes be automated, right? Now I don't know what the actual number is, but I'm guessing somewhere between 95 and 98% of our clients use QuickBooks. And there are, bolt-on, add-on, software, dashboards that you can get for QuickBooks. You just kind of link them up to your chart of accounts, and it can start crunching those numbers for you. So if you have a CRM, there may be a dashboard there that has some built-in things for sales and customer service and project management and those types of things if you have CRM software. If you have project management software, there's probably some, a dashboard built in for those things. Today, you kind of expect to see KPIs and sometimes I call them dashboards, for specific areas. But again, be a little careful because, CRMs are generally, they're not exclusive to sales, but most of the KPIs that they're looking at are mostly sales-oriented KPIs.
For the TLA challenged CRM is a three-letter acronym.
Yeah, TLAs and FLANs.
What's the CRM?
Oh, customer relationship management. Sorry, Andy, good question. So what is a CRM? It is customer relationship management software. So it's more than contact management. It really helps you to work through your sales process, to understand where your suspects are, who are your suspect pool of people who might need your services, who are the prospects who probably could use your services, who are the qualified prospects, those people that you've talked to, they have the need, the authority, the money, and the urgency to act. It's not a qualified prospect unless you've got all four of those aspects. People usually forget that urgency one, and so they spin their wheels calling back people and not understanding why they're not acting on it. It's because they have no sense of urgency. So CRM, customer relationship management software. So when it comes to KPIs, I walked into one guy's office and he wanted to show me his screen of KPIs, and it was jammed full of all of these different things that he was tracking. And I'm used to looking at these things, and I couldn't make hide nor hair out of it. It was just too much stuff, too busy. And he was measuring things that I know were not germane to the things that he was trying to accomplish for his business in this year. And so I said, so which ones do you actually use? He goes, well, I look at all of them. And I said, yeah, which ones do you actually use? He goes, well, he only used one or two of them. And and he was looking at the right one or two for what he was trying to accomplish. So more is not necessarily better. I could have just said that and we'd have saved 3 or 4 minutes. Any questions on KPIs, kind of what they are, and just general background on KPIs? Okay, let's move on to financial ratios.
Is this applying to larger businesses or small businesses or what?
And everything in between.
Okay.
So if you're a small...
lot of this is French to me.
Yeah.
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 I'm
And
I'm trying to process a lot of this.
So ask questions, and we can go back over things afterwards. And some of this will make sense after I provide the handout and walk you through some of it. So we'll do a little one-on-one in the the workshop aspect of it, her area.
Gotcha. Like
So
some case studies.
this is just sort of background information. This will hopefully make more sense when you're actually looking at some numbers.
Gotcha.
Can I
Okay,
contribute?
good. I'm sorry, Jen?
Can I contribute? I wanted to ask you a question. Are you wondering what an example of a KPI is? Or
Like a case study would be helpful.
So for example, KPIs, I own a company, but I sell, like Peter does, all day long. And so I track every day
Mhm.
how many phone calls I make, how many proposals I write, how many deals I close, everything that's related to the sales process. And each thing that I do has a weighted average, and I have to hit a certain number of points every day to make sure that I'm on track to drive the amount of business that I want. Does that make sense?
So this is a sales oriented scenario.
For me, but he
Okay.
does everything. He does business overview, numbers, crunching, but does that give you some idea there?
So this is why I'm talking about the KPIs. There's no one right thing. So if you're a chief financial officer, the things that you look at is going to be a lot different than the chief sales officer or the chief marketing officer
Right.
or any of the chief officers of a company. Now, if you own a small business, guess what? You're the chief everything officer.
Yeah.
So you need to
So
take a look at a number
yeah.
of things and make a decision on, okay, if I'm going to be successful this year, what are the couple of things I really need to pay attention to ensure I am generating what I need to in order to be successful by these different measures? Maybe it's sales revenue, maybe it is customer acquisition or customer retention, maybe it is profitability, maybe it is this, maybe it's that. It just depends on what you want to focus on. So again, we'll get into a little bit more of this when we look at we get to the workshop part. Good, thank you. And you actually, Jen, do you actually track all of the different factors?
In terms of sales?
Yeah, day by day, you go through, you track all that stuff?
Yeah, I do, and
Uh,
I'm really
I'm in
excited
love
to
with you.
hear.
This is exactly what you need to do in sales.
Yeah, I do. I'm not going to say anything more because I'm so excited to be here. I want to know what else you have to say.
So this is totally a digression from our discussion of KPIs, but I've been in sales for 40 plus years, and I've seen great salespeople. I've seen really crappy salespeople. The best salespeople that I know are not the backslapping, gregarious guys. It's the ones that come in, sit down, shut up, and make the phone calls, go out and make the calls. It's the ones that have discipline. Discipline, I think, is the single most important factor in being successful in sales. Now, people say it's a people business. No, you buy from people you don't like every day. You buy from the people that have the discipline to be in front of you and to provide the information you genuinely want to help you to achieve what you're trying to achieve. It is the sales managers that need the people skills. No, that is a people business.
So
Daryl.
what I'm hearing though is that any key process for your business could have key performance indicators around it.
Correct.
To determine whether or not that process is fulfilling the objective of being key, right?
Absolutely.
And it could be as simple as, if you run projects, how many project requests do I get? And then how many of those are aligned, for example, with the strategy of the company, those types of metrics, right? Does that make sense, or is it a little different than that?
No, that's right on the money. So what Daryl, for those of you who can't hear Daryl, what Daryl's talking about is there's lots and lots and lots of different kinds of indicators, performance indicators. And these are true for every department of a company, whether it's a small or medium or large company. Every department, every role within the department is going to have performance indicators. If you're an order entry clerk, maybe the thing you pay attention to is time on the phone. You measure how much time there is on the phone. If you're, inbound marketing company, maybe that's what they measure for you. If you are a shipping and receiving, maybe it's number of items that got sent out on time and correctly. So all of those different performance indicators are different depending on who you are applying those indicators to, or what role, what position, what level in the company. So a good summary?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So financial ratios are often used as key performance indicators. And in the folder I'm going to hand out, I'm going to provide you information about financial ratios. There are descriptions of them. There are, the equations themselves. Are people familiar with financial ratios? Current ratio, what's the current ratio? Okay, we're not all accountants. So a current ratio is a financial ratio that looks at the ratio of your current assets, the things that you own in the current quarter or current time period, versus what you owe. So things that are in current assets are things like cash, receivables, things that can be converted to cash quickly. Inventory, your current assets. Current liabilities are the stuff that you have to pay on. So that's not only your current portion of your credit cards, but it's also the current portion of your long-term debt. So this is a ratio that is an indicating of your bill-paying ability, right? If it's 1-to-1, you have just enough to cover your bills. That's not a healthy situation. That means there's nothing left to pay you anything, or anybody else for that matter. If it is 2-to-1, what does that tell you? Well, it means you get twice as much current assets as you do current liabilities. But is that good? Is that good for your industry? Well, it may be good for one industry. It may not be so good for others. I forget somebody in here. I just take a quick glance through some of the information. The industry standard for their industry was like 7-to-1, which is that's pretty high. In other industries that are very capital intensive, that may even be 1.25-to-1. It varies. And this is why you have to have that industry information. It's like me saying, hey, it's 23 degrees out. What does that mean? I don't know. It would help if we said it was Fahrenheit or Celsius or 23 Kelvin. Yeah, not sure. I'd probably put a little heavier coat if that was the case. So having the number in and of itself doesn't tell you much. But knowing what that number means for your industry against other similar companies, what the norms are, that tells you a lot. So 4 kinds of ratios. There's liquidity, activity, there's profitability, there's leverage ratios. We're not going to go into too much depth on what they are other than to just identify that there are different kinds of financial ratios. So characteristically, what are the characteristics? When you see a business, what's your, how do you know if this thing is healthy or not? How do you know if your business is healthy? Well, one of the things that I've noticed, I've been in hundreds and hundreds of businesses doing system studies, doing consulting, trying to sell them stuff. I've been in them for a lot of different reasons. And here's something that I noticed as I was going through, some of the processes that I go through. One is, you ever been to go to a dentist or to a vet or a medical office or chiropractor or whatever, and ever walked in and the person at the front desk looks up at you like you are a kind of a disgusting interruption of their time, right? How do you feel about that doctor? You haven't even seen the doctor yet, and already you don't want to deal with them, right? And you walk into, so you go and you don't like it, and then you find a new vet or dentist or whatever, and you walk in and the person behind the counter greets you. They are thankful that you're there. They are eager to help, right? Because they know you're, one way or another, you're paying their salary, but also they're just glad you're there because they understand the value of their contribution, greeting you and checking you in and moving you through their process. They understand how that contributes to the overall vision for that office, right? So when you walk in the door, your first clue is that receptionist behind the desk, right? Or I walked into, one of my favorites is Motorola. They're kind of an interesting company. And if you go to the paging, what used to be the pager plant in Fort Worth, or you go to the cellular division, or you go to corporate, the sector building of corporate headquarters, or you go to Motorola Computer Group. I was selling intelligent communications controller boards, so I was like the enemy of the Motorola Computer Group. And even within the same company, how they greeted you and welcomed you was entirely different. And if I looked at all of those different groups at that time, and I used to spread the financials for their various divisions, I could tell you just from that greeting which division was doing well and which division was kind of under the gun. So energized people who buy into the vision, that's really kind of a first clue. sales growth of the company, earnings growth. Are they achieving sustainable profits? The key being the sustainable, not the profits. How do they treat their people? How do they treat employees? How do they treat the community? One of the things I love about the Chamber of Commerce is that it is a way for business owners to give back to their communities through the Chamber of Commerce. How do they engage with various shareholders for the company, whether that's clients or vendors or employees? So how else do you know if your business is healthy? Well, you can have somebody do a quantitative analysis of your financial statements, where they go in and it's called spreading the financials, and they will do all of those different ratio calculations and take a look at your company from a critical quantitative process or methodology, quantitative analysis of your financial statements. And that will tell you what the symptoms are. Now, I'm an MBA. Most MBAs I know think that it's all about the numbers, and I'm here to tell you, no, the numbers are the symptoms, they're not the solutions. But they do tell you where you need to start asking additional questions, right? And this is, again, only in relation to what is normal for your industry and your size of company. So doing a quantitative analysis will give you some detailed information about the performance of your company in the past. It'll also help you to start asking questions about what's broken and needs fixing, and just as importantly, what's not broken and you should stop fixing. So it's kind of human nature that we start businesses to do whatever it is that we know how to do. So you can imagine that in most companies, that runs pretty well because the owner knows how to do that stuff and they pay attention to it. And when they're done putting out fires and they actually have a few minutes of free time, I know it's not a myth, there are some cases where there is a little free time to go pay attention to these things. They go work on what's already working well instead of focusing on the stuff that isn't working well. So financial analysis can actually reveal some of this, what to go work on and how desperate you need to be to do it. I've walked into situations, done the quantitative analysis and said, if you don't fix these couple of problems, you are not going to have a company in 90 days. I mean, that critical. So the second thing then is to take a look at benchmarking the performance of your company against other similar companies. So if I use the FLAN, NAICS, N-A-I-C-S. Does everybody know what NAICS is? North American Industrial Classification System. So you know how the survey bureau, Census Bureau of the U.S. government comes by and knocks on your door every 10 years, and they ask you questions that you just don't even want to tell the government about your household. They do sort of the same thing. Another group of the Census Bureau is this North American Industrial Classification System. And it basically answers the question, how do we peg what it is that you do? What is your primary product or service? And so it's that NAICS code that I looked up for those businesses that registered before noon yesterday. So doing that enables me to then compare the performance of your company against other similar companies by NAICS code and by relative revenue size. Less than $1 million, 1 to 10 million, 10 to 50 million, et cetera, in revenues. But a quantitative analysis and a quantitative comparison, it does tell you a lot of useful information. Again, mostly about symptoms. But we balance, at least my company balances that by doing a qualitative analysis. So since about 1985, I've been not only doing the quantitative analysis, but over the years I've developed a survey that kind of goes department by department through a company. Now, I'm not here selling my services, don't get me wrong, but consultants and CPAs and some financial analysts can do this for you. We do a qualitative analysis in addition to the quantitative, and we look by department at what's going on. And then we compare the indicators from the quantitative analysis to the indicators from the qualitative analysis. So when I give it out to a business owner, and it's a Word document, and it's about 14 pages of onerous and often obnoxious questions. And when I get it back, depending on the complexity of their organization and depending upon the verbosity of the business owner, I may get back 50 pages, I may get back 250 pages describing what is going on for that question and that department for that company. So by comparing the two, that gives us some really useful information on what that company's strengths are, what is of true strategic value inside that business, and what is broken, and pretty much what order in which things need to be fixed. Questions about that? Okay, we call it a business health assessment. Now, there are people that sometimes when you buy a business, or if you're a new president or a CEO of a business, you're going to get feedback from your sales department and from your customer service department and from a few of your clients that you may go visit. And that's mostly positive feedback because, clients are, if they're going to meet with you, then you're pretty sure you're going to get positive feedback. Otherwise, they're not going to meet with you. But what about those clients that won't meet with you or that you truly want objective information from? If you're a new president of the company, you really want to know what reality looks like in terms of the caliber and quality of your products and services. And so some companies hire a third party to ask those kinds of questions of their client base, their customer base, and they call them up and go, I'm Zelda from XYZ company, and your vendor such and such hired us to call up you and other customers to get some real feedback on how they're doing. So I've got a series of questions. Can I ask them of you? And they'll go through this list of questions and really get at what their customers really think of the company. And that gives often startling information because, at least in my experience, what companies think they're good at and what they really are good at are often two different things. Example, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Company up there is a design engineering firm. And they invited me to come up and talk with them. And so I asked them, I said, so what are you good at? Ignoring that that's bad grammar. They smiled, and great big smiles, and they go, oh, well, we can design anything. Really? And is that your message to your clients? Yeah, we tell them we can design anything. Well, think about it. If you're a design engineering group in a technology firm, do you want to hire the guy that can design anything, or do you want to hire the group that can design what you need done and has experience doing it? So the messaging was all. So I smiled broadly and said, I can help you. So what they thought they were good at is not what they were good at. Turns out what they were good at is they were the masters of field programmable gate arrays. And these are big honking, power sucking, heat producing chips that are used for times when you need real flexible programming. So that's used for test equipment. You go into the technician goes in to test this piece, this device for that customer, and then he comes back, plugs in because he's about to go to another customer for another device, needs a different set of diagnostic codes, and so they can change on the fly. This is the value of a field programmable gate array. The other thing is that it's great for proof of concept development. And so technology companies like that proof of concept because that's how they get their funding. That's their funding cycle. They prove that it can be done. Somebody gets a great idea, and the department manager goes, show me that it can be done. So they'll use a field programmable gate array oftentimes to show that it can be done. Well, this company, turns out there were two major vendors in the world of field programmable gate arrays. And if you look at all of the engineering companies, there was only one company in the world that was the master of both chipsets. And they could tell that customer which one to use for their situation. They had test beds, and I know this is probably Greek or what was it, Latin or whatever to some of us, but they could provide that development engineering group with all the things they needed in order to fast track their development. And on top of that, if that group blew up and couldn't do it, they had the skill set on board to save their butts. So they had test beds, they had MIBs, they had APIs, all the kind of stuff that development engineering groups love to have. So what they were good at was they were the masters of the two top field programmable gate array sets. what their message was is, we can design anything, which the purchasing department loved to hear but never hired. And the engineering department, who was their actual customer, didn't want to hear until they changed their messaging. So, if they had hired somebody to actually check with their clients, they would have found that out. So what is a business health assessment? Or sometimes it's called a business health checkup. So does everybody here go to their doctor annually for a physical? Go for an annual checkup? Good. For the rest of you, yeah, I don't actually either. You go to the dentist, what, twice a year to get your teeth cleaned and checked? We go to the eye doctor, every other year maybe, to get our eyes checked. Why do we do this? We do it to prevent bad problems from, kind of diagnose them early. Why don't we do that for our businesses? Why don't we bring somebody in to diagnose our business, to find out what's working well and what isn't working so well, and help us figure out how to fix what needs fixing and how to leave alone the things that are already working right. So that's what a business health assessment will do for you. It does the quantitative analysis of your financial performance. It does the qualitative analysis. It does the competitive benchmarking against similar firms. And the result of that is that you have the information that you need in order to decide what your new goals are. Now it's January 2017. How many of us are done with it, got done our business plan for the year? Okay, a couple of show-offs here in the front. How many, did you also do on top of that, your business plan, did you do a sales plan? Did you do an operations plan? Did you do an information technology plan? Did you do a marketing plan? Did you do a cash flow plan? All right?
So I might seem like a show-off, but the reason that I've got that ticked and tied is I'm a member of the CLATS group, and I'm using people in the CLATS to help me. So it's because we all run our own businesses as well, right? And we're not an expert at everything. So, sorry.
No,
quick
I appreciate your putting in a pitch for the Consultants Coffee Klatch. So the Consultants Coffee Klatches are groups of professional service providers who get together monthly to talk about best practices. So Scott is a member, Daryl is a member, I am a member. And I'm not here to tout the Consultants Coffee Klatches, except that's the group that we draw from to provide, and Paul is. That's the group that we draw from to do the lunch and learn sessions. So the Snoqualmie Valley Chamber of Commerce sponsors this, and the Consultants Coffee Klatches provide the speakers. So if you think about a business owner and the kind of trusted advisors or advice that they should be surrounding themselves with, that's that's the composition of our coffee klatches. So insurance guys, investment guys, lawyers of various flavors, technology people, marketing people, et cetera, et cetera. So there are between 50 and 60 members of the coffee klatches. There's 4 klatches. When it gets to be about 15 people, we cut it off and start a new klatch. So anyway, what good then, is that business health assessment? It sounds complicated. It sounds like a lot of effort. So how do you actually use the information that comes out of a business health assessment? Well, for our 2017 plans, if you want to get from here to there, it'd be useful to know where here really is. You remember, there's always that difference between where we are really and where we think we are. So this gives you the where you are really in your business. If you're preparing for expansion, whether that is market expansion or whether you're going to buy additional companies to expand, or if you're going to buy additional equipment or hire additional people, you need to have the information to know that you're able to do that and able to sustain that. If you're going to go in to have a discussion with your banker, this can be really useful information. Rob Watton, he and I have discussions about this all the time, about how useful it is for business owners to walk in well prepared when they're coming to ask for loans for equipment acquisitions, business acquisitions, for expansion for simply working capital to have, to be buttoned up and well prepared. It helps you to identify what's broken and needs fixing, and it helps you to figure out in what order they need to be fixed. So, A, B, C, D, E. C may be the most important thing. It may be what matters most, but sometimes you got to get A and B done before you can tackle C. So it's not just what matters most. It also helps you to figure out in what order makes most sense to solve the problems. Exit planning. Do y'all want to sell your businesses eventually? Well, this is the basis for solid exit planning. Again, if you're trying to get from here to there, you got to know where here is. So this is like the starting point for that. Sellability. Do you wonder if your business is sellable? Or if not, what needs to be done in order to get it sellable into the future? Again, this is the basis for those kinds of decisions. So a business health assessment is used for a lot of different purposes. What's involved with it? Well, as I mentioned, most of our clients use QuickBooks. So most of them give me a memory stick with a QBB file, a QuickBooks backup file, and the password. And I, enter that into my computer, bring up their financials. I subscribe to a software service that does the analysis of that. Now, back in 1985, I would do exactly the same kind of financial ratio analysis back on paper. Do y'all remember paper spreadsheets, right? And I was in sales, and so my boss would come in and go, "Basaka, what the hell are you doing?" And I go, "Well, I'm spreading the financials of this company." They go, "Oh, you're in sales. What the, why are you doing that?" Well, before I walk in, I want to have some idea as to what I'm walking into. And what their problems are, because that affects how you sell to development engineering groups. If they've got tons of money and they're making tons of profits, there's a very different attitude inside those groups than if they are struggling and need to get to market faster. So, then we, in about 1985, put that on electronic spreadsheets, Lotus, and, eventually Excel came out. And it did all of the same number crunching, right? A calculation is a calculation. But what this subscription service does that I could not do, one is they can put them out in really nice looking reports. I never figured out how to do that. The second thing is they can benchmark the performance of your company, for example, against other similar ones. This is what I use for that benchmarking. And in real time, it'll even tell us what the number of people that are in the sample pool for that NAICS code and that revenue range. And so we know from that how statistically significant the information is. So it'll not only benchmark the performance against other things, it's in real time. This is not information that is like Moody's. You go down to the library, you can get the same information from Moody's, but it's probably 3 or 4 years old. By the time it's actually collecting dust on a librarian's shelf in the reference section, that information is probably 3 years old by the time it gets there. By the time they collect it, by the time they organize and then get it published and then get it printed and then get it onto a library's shelf, you're probably talking at least 2 years, probably 3-year lag time. And with budgets for libraries being what it is, it may be longer than, more than 3 years. So it's real-time information, which I find very valuable. So what are the benefits for a business owner to, have this kind of analysis done, right? Well, revenues go up. We all like revenues. Profits go up. Personally, I like profits better. Problems go down. When you know what's causing the fires, we're putting out fires, most of us, day in, day out, but we never seem to take the time or have the time to figure out what's causing the fires. Business health assessment can help do that. And so not only do your fires tend to go out, but problems go down, and a little later on in this list, it's, the result of that is you sleep better. And don't discount the value of a good night's sleep. So your business value improves dramatically. Your time and attention is focused on the right things, and you waste far less time. You get more effective planning and execution. Your long term, your business will be a lot more enticing to prospective business buyers. So in summary, KPIs can be amazing tools that help us to stay focused on the factors that matter most to our business. And remember, less is often more, right? The fewer, the ones that matter, the KPIs that matter are the ones you want to focus on. More just as distracting. Financial ratios are useful if you know the industry's norms, and a business health assessment where you combine both the quantitative and the qualitative can really help. So this is sort of the model that I recommend to people, is that, you know, at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year, you know, assess your company's performance. And then figure out, you know, go through the consulting phase of, you know, what's broken and needs fixing, in what order, what are the possibilities on how to fix this, how do we test things before we implement them, how do we implement them, how do we test them after we implement them, what if we implement them and test them and it's not working, what's our plan B, what's our, you know, consulting, right? And then you slide into the part where you actually are accountable for achieving the goals that you set and the milestones, and that we call, or at least I call, accountability coaching. If you hire a third party to do that, you can kind of call that professional nagging. That's part of the service that we provide. But it helps to keep you on track, it helps hold you accountable for achieving the goals and executing the strategies that you created.